Hey, what's up, guys? We're back again. We are working our way through our beginner curriculum, kind of, and we're hopefully in the next few videos going to be starting our first project. There was a few more elements I wanted to make sure that we touched on to cover them, especially for beginning, because basically all of these are used for almost every project that you do in leatherwork. So if you're interested in the craft, hopefully you can learn a little something from it. Tonight we're going to be looking at some edge work. So it's super important, and this honestly this can set your leatherwork apart from some others. And again, it's almost used in every aspect of leatherwork. I'm working on some watch bands here. We have some different things, I just have some little test pieces here. I'm just going to show a little bit what I do, and hopefully to get you some clean edges. It's kind of like a little calling card, if you will. Some folks spend a lot of time on these edges and they look gorgeous. And so super clean finishes, nicely well sanded and round off, and they'll be very smooth. You know, and it really does set your work apart. So hopefully you can learn a little bit. And I appreciate you tuning back in. Hopefully you guys have been pulling together some skills and working on them and practicing, and we'll be working our way up to our first project in no time. So without further ado, let's look at a little bit of edge work. Y'all don't mind my mat. This just means I was doing some work, that's all. So for edge work, if you look at, this is just a piece of vegetable tan leather, but when you cut it, it's gonna generally have a very flush edge right here. Be kind of that 90-degree look. You can see there's some fibers and some things in there that are still standing up, and it's pretty raw right there. So what I'm gonna do, first thing you want to do is you want to make sure you got a clean edge to work with. If you can see here, I got a little bit of excess that's in there, and so what I'm going to do first is just clean that up, just so it'll give you a better idea about how this should look in the end. Now, I will say vegetable tan leather, out of any of the leathers, these edges will be beautiful, because it's generally got a little bit more firmness to it and rigidity, and it really just takes this gum trag. This will be something that we'll be applying later, which helps kind of seal everything together. So I have two pieces. Basically what I did was I folded a piece of vegetable tan leather over on itself and contact cemented it. And so first thing we'll do, see these little tools here? It's like a little edge beveler. So what we're going to do is we're going to knock down these edges. These things are very pretty tight edges right now at that 90 degrees, and we're basically just going to take a little bit of this off the side. Reason being, later on we're going to hit it with something called a slicker here, and if we have these 90-degree edges like we do, and we start hitting it with this thing and creating friction and putting some pressure on it, two things can happen. One, you can have those edges almost start to squeeze down, and you almost have like a little ditch, or a little sure, we'll call it a ditch. So these sides can kind of come in and fold in on themselves, or you can actually push them back, and it kind of creates this little ridge on top here, and it does not look good because you end up smashing it down, and it creates a terrible look for your piece. And this is something that you're generally going to do pretty late in the project, and really it's one of those finishing touches. So it's something that you want to really spend some time on and try to get right. So we have a nice clean cut here. This edge beveler, what it's going to do, you kind of see it just has a little groove in there, and it sits right in there. So we're going to essentially sit it right there, and you can also see how it's beveled here. That's basically how you want to sit it on the leather there. So this takes some time to get the touch for it, the feel for it, and the angle for it. So again, just like we learned in our other video with skiving, you want to have something solid down here and something that's not going to stick this or get caught up on there. So this will be something super important for you. And what you want to do, I always make sure you have a nice sturdy piece here. You're going to start in here, and you're going to have to just figure out the angles. A lot of it is by feel. If you catch yourself and you're digging into those edges, that's too much. So you basically just want to create a nice little, you almost just want to peel that thing back a little bit. So let's see if we can get one right here. So I usually like to just kind of guide it with my thumb just to get it going. And once it goes, generally slides across. Now it was a very, very thin, but it's honestly not that bad. I'm gonna try to go a little bit heavier this time. Create up over that edge. There you go. You can get a better look that way. And what you usually want to do is keep a pretty good pace. Again, you don't want it to dig in, and so that's not too bad there. But what it's going to do is basically take that edge and kind of create it in half. So I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. And when I'm not talking and I just focus, that's the kind of piece that you want to create right there. Just a nice, solid, consistent draw from there, and you can see that looks pretty good. Now, again, these are two pieces of leather coming together. You can even sand this down, and you almost see it starts to form. And I just hit on those edges lightly that I just touched over. You can kind of see it creates that nice little white, kind of real light area in there. We'll do the same thing on both sides here. This also helps too if you had any of the contact cement or any glue in there that kind of bled through. And this does take some time, but essentially what we're going to do here is smooth this out. All right, and then this solution here, this is just one I use. I've been using it for a few years now. Just some gum trag from EcoFlow, and you can get this at Tandy. It's on Amazon too as well. You can get a few different places, but it's a burnishing agent. So what burnishing is you'll see here in a minute how this kind of turns out. So here's an unfinished edge, kind of janky, and then here's one that's going to be finished shortly. So watch the changes as we apply this, and you can just apply this. I usually just end up dab my finger in there, sliding it across. There's all kind of dabbers and things like that, and you can already see it's kind of changing colors. And I put this on pretty liberally. Don't be afraid, it dries up and it's fine. So it's almost happening without my slicker. So you get the slicker. These things have different size grooves in them. If it's too small, it's going to smash the leather down. So you want to find one that it fits in pretty comfortably, which is going to be this one here. You can kind of see that fit. And so all you're going to do is create, you have this solution on there, and what you're going to do is just create friction. So all you're doing is running this back and forth, and you'll start to hear that magical sound that you know that you're doing correctly, and that it's touching those edges just right. Vegetable tan is the only thing that does it. You'll hear it. Almost sounds like it's sticking on there. And so you can almost see you get that high gloss finish that's going to be on there as well. Now the trick to edge work is that you're going to get out of it exactly what you put into it. So this one was done pretty quickly, but still, because it's vegetable tan leather, that's a pretty nice, I can see a gloss on that thing. That's going to probably waterproof it pretty well. But you can do it once. I can also come back, kind of resand this again, or go up to a higher grit paper, get a nice sand on there, and you'll notice that eventually this just becomes one piece of leather, right? So that piece that we folded over almost comes one piece of leather. Now, if you think of something, you can think of all kind of projects, right? So let's say a watch band. So a watch band, unless you're folding it over double, look at that. Now I'm just doing it with my finger and it looks great. And so, again, this is kind of the second round through. A lot of folks have machines and stuff like that. You can just sand it down and then skive it on the other side. If you're doing it by hand, I just prefer to do things that way just because, I don't know, it makes me feel more connected to my work, I guess. But that edge right there, that's just after 2 relatively easy attempts. That is very, very nice, very, very clean. That looks great, and that's going to look great on an end product. Think of things like wallets, right? If you have a nice clean finish like this, kind of coming down that top and the side, that's really, really going to set your work apart. And this money clip that we're going to work on in just a week or two, this is going to be something that will be involved. We're going to clean up the edges on anywhere where there's going to be a stitch line or anywhere where it's going to be secured together. But that is basically burnishing and the reason for it, right? So again, here's a kind of raw finish here, and there's a finished edge right there. Again, you're going to put in or get out of it what you put into it. So that's something that, you know, you could spend 6-7 times through there and that thing will look like glass by the time it's done. So again, that's a relatively easy finish there. There are some other things you could put on there. This is a wax that can also go on there, and you can just rub this on here. A lot of times I'll just hold it up to my one of the lights I have around just to kind of give it a little bit of heat, but also it's going to be enough friction on there. And again, this is going to help protect it. This is going to kind of fill in those gaps. Now when you hit this with some sandpaper and come back, or hit it with the slicker, it just gives it that much more of a finished look. This kind of knocks the sheen off a little bit. So now that kind of just melts in, fills in those gaps, those little things that you can't even see. And that is gorgeous. I mean, that is a very, very nice piece of finish right there with relatively little effort. Another thing you can do, and this is one I've already kind of started on. I've only put a coat or two on this, but you can actually, there's paint that basically goes on the edge. It's called edge coat. I use a lot of the Feebings products here, and this actually creates, you see it's brown, so it's almost like a paint that goes on the edges to help seal these up. So once you've kind of done that first step like we've done here, I only have about one coat on here now, so it's not completely filled in, but this is two pretty thick pieces of leather that I have knocked down, and now I'm kind of finishing these edges. And so let's see, I'm gonna get, here's what you need here. You'll see these, you can buy these relatively cheap as well, well on up, and then there's also machines you can do, and you can just kind of roll it across there and the paint kind of comes up on there. But this one we're gonna do by hand. This thing should roll pretty freely. I didn't believe it was gonna work when I first bought it. I said, there's no way this thing can work and this paint won't drip everywhere, but it does pretty good. So again, this is two pieces of leather. I've sanded it a few times. I've run my slicker on it. And now what I'm gonna do is basically start to put, you can see that paint stays right on where it's supposed to. Again, you can put it on relatively thick. This usually takes a couple coats to get a nice clean finish in there, and it almost dries like a plastic. You can kind of see how it's filling in. Again, it's filling in, it's seeping in, it's creating kind of a barrier here, and it's protecting your end product as well on those edges. And again, this is going to look pretty nice here to really set it apart. If you look at even a lot of stock bands that you get and things like that, a lot of times they use a liner, they use filler, and they use relatively thin leather, and then they'll hit it with this edge coating in there just to kind of hide it, so it looks like it's thicker than it is, it looks like it's nicer than it is. But when you're using leather, this really comes out nice. So you obviously just let this dry, and then after a coat or two, same thing goes. You can sand it down just to kind of create that nice thing. You can apply more, sand it down, apply more, hit it with the slicker, and eventually you're going to get just the finest. You can get these as nice as you want. The more time you spend on them, the prettier they'll be. So but this again is going to be part of our first project when we make our little money clip, and so I just really wanted to touch on that briefly. But just to get those edges right, a lot of people take pride in these things, and like I said, it can kind of set your work apart in the end. All right, so we're getting close. Again, here is, I think that came out great, and shoot, I just did very little work on that too. So that just shows you, again, a little bit of effort can go a long way. But this is, again, something that'll set your pieces apart. I use it on almost every project I have. If you can see a seam, if you can see, even if it's a single piece of leather, a lot of my even watch bands that are single, if I do a flap like this and I have the raw edge underneath, I still hit it on this side just to lay down those fibers, kind of give it a nice rounded edge, and it just gives it a nice, much more finished look. So they do look great. We're getting close to our first project. I think we have a few elements left, but otherwise we're well on our way, and we should be there shortly. So stay tuned if you want to draw out this little project and complete it from start to finish. We're going to use each one of the elements that we've learned so far, connect them all together, make our first item, and then hopefully build on from there. So this will be a great start for us. If you can get some edge work like this with some little effort, you're going to be golden. So this will be, like I said, this is really set you apart in the work that you, if you're making it for yourself, you're making it for friends, or if you end up selling some of your work too, this really can set you apart. And you can see the people who don't put any time or effort into it. So hope you enjoyed it. I appreciate you coming by. I've enjoyed these. If y'all could subscribe and help me out, help me grow this thing out, that'd be awesome. I really do enjoy this, and I really want to make this grow and hopefully get all these ideas that are stuck up in his head out into the world. So I'll see y'all soon. I appreciate you stopping by. Thanks.